on. Let's share my desktop. All right, let's go over these problems. Start with number 15. You had $500,000 in sales at $4 a unit and $1.50 a unit for the costs. So we have R minus C, revenues minus cost times 1 minus T. And then our depreciation, we're doing the, it's 5 years straight line. You got to read that one carefully. I know when you see straight line, you're almost on alert to do what? Cost minus salvage divided by N, right? That's weird. Okay, this one says specifically though, depreciated to a value of 0. So that's why I'm not getting, you know, so let's see, we'd probably have, so plus 6 million minus 500,000 and then divided by 5. Okay, that would be a, oh, come on, what are you doing? Why does it do percent? How on earth? Yeah, so that'd be 1,100,000. But that's not what they said to do. What they said to do was depreciate it to a value of 0. So it's just basically 6 million divided by 5. All right, and then we're starting with 10% of the following year's sales as working capital. And so we have initially 200,000, and then at the end of year 1, we'd have 10% of 2.4 million or 240. That's an increase of 40. And so therefore our cash flow would be the 812,500 plus 420 minus 40, and that's what we get. And you just go along like that until you get to the last year. Okay, and then the last year, you have the salvage value. So maybe I'll type these out here. You have the tax cash flow. Okay, let's just do that one. So it would be 0.35 times 500,000. In other words, this has been fully depreciated, so therefore any amount of salvage is taxable. And so this is, if you want, we can make it formal. I mean, I'm not working it here anyway, so it'd be minus 0, wouldn't it? So the book value is 0, so it makes this whole thing taxable. And so we'd have 1,635,000 plus 325, and that would put you at 1960. All right, we have all that. We do an NPV at, looks like it was at 12%. And we get a negative number. And that tells me that since this is negative, I know that this IRR should be or will be less than 12%, and it is. So this is a reject, isn't it? Don't fund this one. All right. And then here's the funny, strange problem. And it looks like I did them backwards. This is the taxable entity. So anyway, I went through all the cash flows, and let's just do this first one real quickly. Do I have it right here? Let me see what I have here. So 26,000, 1 minus T plus, I'm not sure about that. Let me start over. So it would equal 26,000 times 1 minus T plus, and then the first year we can take 20%, and the cost is 100,000, and times T. So I get the cash flow of 23,900. I copy this across, and I kind of gave you a little warning about this, that the last cash flow is nothing but the depreciation tax yield. So even though you have 5 of these $26,000 cash flows, you have one more because of the depreciation tax shield. Okay. And if you did all that, you would find an NPV of, at 8% of a minus 4,127. You find IRR of 6.39%. This is the number you needed, really. The zero tax rate, I think this is actually company A. The zero tax rate company, it's just the present value of the cash flows minus $100,000. Depreciation tax shields are meaningless since T is 0. So in this case, I get an NPV of 3810 and I get a IRR of 9.435%. Right, and then the question becomes, what's the effective tax rate given the impact of the depreciation tax shield? Okay, so 6.39% is equal to 9.435% times 1 minus T, and then you just solve this for T, and you would see that it's approximately 32.31% tax rate, effectively. All right, I all but did this one for you, so I don't know if we need to spend a lot of time on it. We can just do cash flow number 1 again, just to make sure we have it. So it was a minus $2 or $1.50 times the 200,000 units times 1 minus T. Oops, that's not going to work. Will not work well, will it? Plus 0.1429% times, now you can only depreciate the capital cost, right? Not the working capital, so it's not 180, it's 150,000. And then times the tax rate. This thing just loves percents, doesn't it? What the heck? Where'd that come from? I have no idea.
The decimal had a percentage sign on there.
What'd I do?
You put 0.1429%.
Oh! Why'd you say something earlier, Pilgrim? All right. That'll make a difference. I didn't get the right answer even. There we go. 187,498. You basically just continue this down until you run out of depreciation factors, at which time it's just the, thank you, it's just the, yeah, there's nothing here, so there's no factor. And then the last one is the same as 9, so 10 is exactly the same as 9, except we recover the working capital. So it's $30,000 higher. Anyway, I took the present value of all these 10 years of cash flows. I got this number. I also included with that the cost of the asset, the machine. I included with that the working capital. That's my grand total. I think we did this one in class pretty much. The 260, that was plus, sorry, minus $2 per lib times 200,000. See if I can get it right this time. Times 1 minus 0.35. Okay, then plus T times depreciation. There is no asset here. So we got the negative 260. Did that for 10 years. And 10 years, this is our present value of those 10 cash flows. So I guess I would say that the numbers here favor manufacturing this by an advantage of $186,000. Pretty easy? All right. All right, then we'll go to 21. I tell you, this is one of the problems that makes me glad we use Excel. I know many years ago we had problems like this and we do it all by hand. Can you imagine all the chances you have to make an error? That number could be wrong. That number could be wrong. I mean, you got so many ways you can get this wrong. At least this way, if you get the first one right, you have a pretty strong chance of getting the second one. So we're going to start out with $4.2 million. We're gonna 90% of that is the cost. And then this is one in which we have to include the lost rent. So it's basically the mentality is cash flows if I do versus cash flows if I don't. And I have to give up $100,000 in order to take on this project. So you can include it here. And I think I was trying to be fancy one time in my life, and I would actually not include it here, but subtract it on an after-tax basis from the end. Nah, don't do that. Just take it out of there. Okay, so anyway, we get a cash flow, finally 180, and the only place you go wrong here is if you inflate them incorrectly. So we're going to grow sales by 5%. We're going to grow the lost revenues by 4%. And if you can do that and lock the cells correctly, the rest of this will just follow suit until we reach now our depreciation. Let's go through that one time. We will take the capital costs of 1.2 million and divide it by 10. Except that it's only an 8-year asset. So that tells me right away I'm taking 120,000 each year. At the end, I'll have 2 that I don't take. So therefore, I'm going to have a book value of 240, won't I? This is actually backwards than what I would expect. Because I mean, would you rather have depreciation today or in later years? You'd rather have today. So if I have an asset, a project that's only 8 years, why don't I depreciate it 8 years? I mean, that's what I would do. But we're just following the script. So here we go. I think what they're just trying to do is get you in a situation whereby you have a book value at the end. You know, so a positive book value. So anyway, we do the cash flows, we salvage it, and then we have a book value of 240. That would be the last 2 of these 10 payments, 10 depreciation values that we didn't take, which gives us 400,000 minus 240 times 0.35, we get 56,000. There's my last cash flow. Anyway, all the way along, you get an NPV. I don't know where I did label it. Oh, wow. And then if you just want to do the IRR, you could, but I know that it's greater than 12%. Because we discounted these cash flows at 12 and they're positive. NPV, that means this is more than 12, which it is. All right, I'm gonna take a breath to see how we're doing out in Neverland. Where is that thing? Okay. All right. So you can always speak up out there if you want. Those are remote. Or type a question in. I'd be glad to answer it to the best of my ability. All right. And then finally, we're now down to the last 2 copier options. Okay, and let's start with keep the existing copier and pay the higher maintenance. So we actually did these. There's a lot of renewable. Yeah, what'd I do?
Some people are typing questions.
Oh, they are. Well, hurry up, Pilgrim, get that question in. Okay, here we go. What was the NPV formula? What was the NPV formula? For which problem? 21. Okay, that'll do it. Let's go back to the NPV for 21. Okay. So it's just the present value. Now I'll remind you one more time, NPV on Excel is not net present value. So you have to take the present value of cash flows 1 through 8 and then subtract cash flow 0. Now cash flow 0, just according to to the story says that the cost of equipment will be 1.2 million with an initial working capital of 350,000, which will increase every year thereafter to be 10% of the current year's sales. So that's the 70 here. Anyway, so initially it's minus 1.55 million. And then I take the present value of cash flows 1 through 8, subtract 1.55 million, and that's what I get. All right. Okay, and what were the cash flows for question 21? All right, that would be these. You know what I'm going to do? I'll see if I can do this. I should be able to. Up a little bit so you can see them all. I hope that's not too small. It's about the best I can do. So these are your cash flows. I'm not sure what this is. All right, we good then? Okay. All right, sounds good. Let's move on then and work with the copier. And with the copier, oh, I guess I'll, you know what? Let's see if I can shrink this a little bit. That still didn't work. Okay, I'll come down a little bit. All right, anyway. So if you continue to operate the old copier, you have the last 4 depreciations from the 7-year schedule. Okay, they're all based on $20,000 acquisition cost. So there's your depreciations. Times 0.35 gives you the tax shield. The maintenance is $2,000 for the first 2 years, $8,000 each year for the remaining 4. And you put all that together, and you should arrive at these cash flows. So for example, this last one is what? There's no depreciation. So it's just minus 8,000 times minus 0.35, right? We got the 5,200. Right, so then I take the present value of these 6 cash flows, and at 7%, that's what I get. And then I find the equivalent annual annuity. You know what? This is actually equivalent annual cost. Equivalent annual cost. That's the same thing. It's an annuity, isn't it? But you usually call it an annuity if you're doing, like, say, financial planning. You know, I have this many dollars available. How much can I pay each year out of that? That's an annuity, isn't it? So this is a cost. And so, so these cash flows are what then? Equivalent to 6 cash flows of 3, have a present value, equivalent to 6 cash flows of 3,326.67. Yes, very much so. Yeah, it would be. So this is more correct. Yep. Okay. Then we are going to, we did this one. We did 2 years in class. So now let's replace immediately. And actually, if you're just a little bit clever, you could see that what? Cash flow 1 in this option is exactly identical to cash flow 3 in this option, isn't it? So these are all reusable parts. You could just repeat them. And so anyway, here's your cash flows. So this cash flow is exactly the same as cash flow 3 in this option. So all the way down to the end. So cash flows 1 through 8 would be equivalent as 3 through 10 in the other option. Okay, we take the present value. This is what I did. I mean, you might do it, a little differently. Okay, that's the present value of the cost, and that should be positive. It's a positive number. Okay, and then we have the new machine costing, the new copier costing $25,000. And then here's the book. Let's make sure we understand the book. Okay, for the book value, we have, if we replace immediately, we have 4 factors we haven't taken on the old copier. It's the last 4 factors in the 7-year schedule. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do a quick auto sum of these last 4 factors. Okay, so those represent what percentage of the acquisition cost has not yet been depreciated. So if I multiply that times the acquisition cost, okay, well, that's pretty good. Start again. So equals number times 20. Of course, that's what we have to do. Percentage, don't we? Okay, let's do this one. That's where I got the 6248 here. Okay, so I have the salvage of the old copier is 8,000. The book is 6248. That would give me a cash tax flow of 613. I took that right out of the 8. So I took the 8,000, subtracted 613. That gave me this number. So then I netted the salvage out of the cost of the new copier. That gave me this number. So I just add a positive 3,332 to a 17, to a, what am I doing here? Yeah, so all together here, I have a positive 3032, a negative 25. That's not what I did. I have a positive 3032, and then I have the net salvage down here. Yeah, so positive 3032 plus the net salvage, that gives me a negative 14. We change that, convert that to a 8-year annuity, and you get, so 8, and then like someone mentioned very correctly, can I do that? Let's just change the sign on this. So the equivalent annual cost is 2,442. So this is the best of the options. So the correct answer to the question would be to replace immediately. Is that okay? Everybody get that? I hope. All right. So then on next class period, Thursday, we will have our first exam. The window will open at 12:30, and from that point on, you have 80 minutes to finish it from the minute you open your window. So if you can open your window, open the test up between 11:30 or 12:30 and 12:40, you get the full 80 minutes. But anything later than 12:40 comes off of your 80 minutes. So try to be early. You will have a total of 20 questions. 8 will come from chapter 4, 6 will come from chapter 5, 8 will come from chapter 6. And what would I know if I were taking this test? Well, I kind of summarized it here on a sheet. I think I did. Yeah, so in chapter 4, the things we had to do, we had the constant dividend growth model, and we also decomposed that into 2 parts, and the 2 parts were what? If you had some words thrown at you, what's this EPS 1 over R? What's that? What does that give me? That's right. The value of the company as a no growth. That is correct. Okay, so we started out and we said that the value of the company is the next dividend divided by R minus G if it's in continuous growth at that time. And all the dividends have to grow at a rate of G, don't they? Okay, but we can further break that down into the value as a no growth plus the present value of the growth opportunities. That's right. So this is the value as a no growth, this is the present value, and that's just the, so if I had a question, ask me what's the present value of the growth opportunities, what's the easiest way? Well, finding P0 is very easy, isn't it? It's this little equation here. And then I can subtract from that EPS 1 and I'd have PVGO, wouldn't I? Right? Then we had table 4.4, which we created in class. But if we could summarize what we did, we started with a book value per share and we multiplied it by ROE to get earnings per share. And what did we do with those earnings? Well, we paid out 1 minus B percent of those as a dividend. What was the small b again? Remember that? Plowback, yes. Okay, so don't get locked into those words. That's the percentage of earnings which the company does what? Reinvest in the company, correct? So I remember back years ago when we had this, what'd you call that stuff? Paper. You said, I gave paper exams. Since the lockdown, that's the first time this class ever saw multiple choice. Before that, it was all paper, and it was all no multiple choice whatsoever. You answer the question. Anyway, I'll never forget it. Person sitting right there raised their hand and said, had a question on the test on this material, and said, and I think the problem said the company reinvests 40% of its earnings. Person asked me, what's the plowback? What do I use for plowback? I'm not going to tell them that. Okay, what is plowback? It's what you reinvest back in the company, isn't it? All right. Okay, and then what? We have this little g in this equation, R minus g. How did we estimate g? We said it's a product of the plowback times the ROE, isn't it? Okay. And you can see here, we had a couple of problems where we're given the expected dividend, didn't we? And we had to find the earnings. They were not given, so what did we do? You can see here that if I just took this dividend and divided by 1 minus b, I would have earnings, wouldn't I? Just solve the same equation, except solve it for earnings instead of dividends, right? Works both ways. Okay. And then finally, what was one of the big takeaways from chapter 4? And that would be, what is required for growth? Okay. And we found that we were taking some part of your earnings, B times earnings per share, some percent of your earnings, you're plowing back into the company. And this plowback, the B times the EPS, earned the ROE. And we said that creates a perpetuity unless you take the money out of the company. This minus B times, or this B times EPS, if it remains in the company, it will create a perpetuity equal to B times EPS times ROE. Since that's a perpetuity, how do you value it? You divide by R. It's a no growth, same cash flow forever. Okay, and if you look at this equation, minus B EPS, B EPS. So that part's the same. The only difference is ROE and R, right? So what was the takeaway from here? Well, you can see, what if I took the easy one? What if ROE and R are the same? So this ratio becomes 1, NPV is 0, isn't it? Let's take the positive outcome. What if ROE exceeds R? You're earning more than your cost of capital. Well, you're creating wealth, aren't you? That makes this equation positive. And then obviously the bad one, what happens if R exceeds your ROE? Then you're destroying wealth, aren't you? Okay, then chapter 5, we had did quite a bit. We did 3 problems in there that all had the, you had to draw an NPV profile. So I would make sure that you understand the profile completely. Like what are you graphing on the vertical axis? It's NPV, isn't it? What are you graphing on the horizontal axis? R, right? The cost of capital. And then as you increase the cost of capital, the NPV continues to decline, doesn't it? That gives us the profile, right? And that way we're able to compare IRR versus NPV. You should be able to calculate both of these. And then one of the stinkers in the IRR calculation is the fact that you can have multiple IRRs. I will not on the exam ask you to find a second IRR. However, you should be able to identify under what conditions might there be two or more IRRs. And we went through that. So, all right, our last is chapter 6, just what we did today. So you should be able to estimate cash flow 0. You should be able to estimate your operating cash flows. You should be able to incorporate the salvage into your estimates and the tax cash flow. And obviously calculate an NPV. When I had the non-multiple choice paper exams, I would throw in what I called a 2-point tickler. So I would put in a little 2-pointer that was as difficult as another problem by itself. It's only worth 2 points. So if somebody is going through this saying, I'm not challenged, I say, okay, get the 2-point one right. Show me you really know what you're doing. Okay, this test does not have a tickler because I only have 20 points to play with. 20 questions, 5 points. So if I made one of those questions a tickler, it's now 95, all right? I only expect those ticklers, I only expected like 1 or 2 people in the class to get it right. Well, I'm not gonna have, knock everybody out from a perfect test except for 1 or 2 people for 1 question. So I have no ticklers. Everything we did in here, you've done something like it. Everything on the test, you have done something like it for homework or example in class, one way or the other. So I'm just asking you to do the same kind of things with different numbers. Now keep in mind, any test, of course, is just a sample of what you've done. I can't include absolutely everything, can I? So, I guess that, I don't know what else. Any questions? Let me check in Neverlander for a minute. You got it, okay.
So Professor Ogden, just to clarify, so it's a multiple choice test, and is it not being used in the Respondus browser?
I don't lock your browser.
Okay.
But okay, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that. Okay, I remember the last time before the COVID issues, last time I used multiple choice was, I think, maybe 10 years ago when I actually taught at 320. Maybe it was 15 years ago, I don't remember. But anyway, I had to make sure back then that I gave 33 questions on a test, and I never had more than about 15 or 16 that had calculations. Otherwise, no one got done. Okay, so this is different. You have 20 questions, and the vast majority of them will have a calculation. All right, so even though you can have your books open, your notes open, have your Excel open, this is not a research project. Okay, so I would say, have everything right in front of you. Have references that you don't need unless you just hit a flat spot. You said, oh, what was that cash flow equation? Oh, yeah. But you know where to find it right away. You look it up. I remember I teach also Finance 326, and I had someone sitting right up here. This is back in paper days, mind you. That was open book, open note. And this person had the book open, this. And I look, the person picks up the book, looks in the glossary. Okay, that's not being prepared for the test. Some people think because this is open book, open note, it can't be hard. Well, guess what? That's actually your hardest test because there's no reservations as to what I can ask, right? Okay, but this is multiple choice, so this is kind of one down from that. But knowing that you have open book, open notes, you go right ahead. The same resources I would have if I took the test. But quite a few calculations. Most of the questions have a calculation. So again, you can't make a research project out of it. You can't be looking things up. So have your notes well organized, and you should do well. I guess what I find in these multiple choices that they tend to make the extremes more obvious. So in other words, I get one group of people that don't know what they're doing, and they can guess a little bit because it's multiple choice, and they might go for anywhere from a score of 25 up to 50 or 60, just from that. Then I got another group that absolutely know what they're doing, and they make one little error. So they're somewhere between, on a bad day, 80 up to 100. And I actually get more hundreds in multiple choice than I ever got on written exams. So, but it separates the crowd. And the people that design these kinds of tests, they have some, I look at my test after I gave it last time, and I don't know these metrics very well, but someone told me you have an excellent test because it distinguished between the guessers and those who knew what they're doing. There's some metric that they have, that they measure, that will tell you if you have a good test. And my test actually scored high on everything. It was supposedly a good test. I hate it, but if we go back this fall, I guarantee you there won't be any more multiple choice in this test, in this class. So that's all I can say, though. I'm sorry that I have to give you this, but I don't know any other way to do it. Could I have you write it out by hand, take a picture of it, and then submit it? I mean, I don't know what else to do. I can't give the calculation type. Now there's one rub, and I mentioned this slightly, a little bit, and that would be continuation errors. Just be careful. I don't think this test is as bad, but the next test, I have a question on the next test. If you get the first one wrong and you're consistent with your calculations the rest of the way, you're going to get the next three wrong. But I'll write that in letters this big. Don't do this on the exam ahead of time. Okay? Because I had a couple of people that aced everything else in test 2 except for that. They got the first one wrong, and then they got the next 4 wrong. It's just part of multiple choice. So, anything I can answer. So your browsers will not be locked, but you'll run out of time if you try to make a research project out of it. So, if you got your brother-in-law sitting here and your best friend sitting here, and you're taking the test, don't listen to them. It'll slow you down too much. No, I'm just kidding. You'll be fine. All right, well, that's all I have. I'm not going to keep you up if I can't help you. What's the FMA social? Are you going to that or attending it or doing it? What's happening?
What?
I saw there's an FMA social.
Oh, tonight?
Yeah.
It's Legs, I think. Wagner's on bracket.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So people will get drinks, and I think they usually order pizza as well. There's
You both?
no, we're in the dome usually.
Oh.
So there's volleyball, bags, things like that.
Got you. And what do you just wear masks?
Yeah, so it's pretty spaced out too, so there's a lot of room.
Oh, okay. I got you. Interesting.
Hi, Professor. I have one question.
Oh, boy, you got me just in time. I was about to send off. What you got?
Can I share my screen with you?
Yeah, please do.
All right. So for my book value, I was following what you left on the Word document for the class notes.
Yeah.
So I left that out, and that